It's a formula. And you don't need 40 years of dedication to meditation to get it. 90% of the thoughts that we think on a daily basis are the same thoughts as the day before. So if you think that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and 90% of your thoughts are the same known thoughts that you're always thinking, then your life should stay the same. Because the same thoughts lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences. The same experiences produce the same emotions. Those same emotions tend to influence the way we think. And our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our hormones, and even our gene expression is equal to how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. If you want to create a new personal reality, a new life, you're going to have to change your personality. And you got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You got to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors, even how you speak. Then you have to look at the emotions that you live by every single day and decide, do these emotions belong in my future? So many people try to create a new life as the same person. Right. In order to create a new personal reality, you got to change your personality. So the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. Thinking the same way, making the same choices, demonstrating the same actions, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you. And you do that for 10 years in a row. Well, you're going to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature because you're firing and wiring that way. And that box in the brain, that becomes our personality, becomes our identity. And by the time we're 35 years old, for the most part, we've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it as well as the mind, and that's a habit. So we have these unconscious programs of behaviors, automatic habits, redundant emotional reactions, hardwired beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that function just like a computer program. You press go and it runs automatically. When it comes time to change, thinking positively is going to do nothing because your body has been conditioned for the most part into a program in the past. Thought never makes it to the body because the body's on a different program. How do we begin to influence the body so that the thought actually produces some type of change? Think about it. If you think an unhappy thought, you're going to feel unhappy. Yeah. If you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. Once you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And people get caught in these loops of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking, and that redundancy is a conditioning process because all you need is an image or a picture or a thought and a feeling, a response, stimulus response. And so the people tend to condition their brain and body into the past. When it comes time to change, you got to leave that familiar territory. And any choice that you make, if you said, hey, I'm going to eat a better diet, I'm going to wake up early and work out, I'm going to do meditation, the moment you decide to do something differently, get ready because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be able to predict the next moment. That means you've left your known biology and you're stepping into the unknown. Theoretically, that sounds great, but if the body has been conditioned into a familiar feeling that's in the known, the moment you take it outside the familiarity, it wants to go back to where it's comfortable. So the body starts influencing the mind, and this is where people say, why don't you start your diet tomorrow? Oh, why don't you start working out this evening? You're really never going to change. You're too tired. You have a headache. This doesn't feel right. And this is where people talk themselves out of it, because if they respond to that thought leads to the same choice, which leads to the same behavior, creates the same experience, produces the same feeling, and then they say, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. So going from one state of mind and body to another state of mind and body, you got to cross a river. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. Now, once people understand that they're going to be uncomfortable, then the question is, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors will you demonstrate in one day? And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain, which is typically a record of the past, now becomes a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, the hardware begins to become a software program and you start behaving differently. And then if you can teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like, that means then you're not going to wait for your wealth to feel abundant or your success to feel empowered or your new relationship to feel love. In fact, the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth. the moment you start embracing empowerment, you're stepping towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you start creating equals in your life. The thing that stops us, for the most part, in doing it is really the hormones of stress, because living in stress constantly is living in survival, and living in survival is living in emergency. In an emergency, it's not a time to create. In an emergency, it's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to learn. It's not even a time to sit still. So most people then that are living in stress and living in survival, they can't believe in a future yet because it's not a time to create. So getting people to that point where they make up their mind, and they make up their mind enough to begin to think, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something else. That awakening process typically happens when people reach their lowest denominator. They hit rock bottom, because then they can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. You feel so altered, you're not returning any texts. You feel so altered, you don't want to go to dinner with your buddies. You feel so altered, you don't want to watch your favorite TV show. You're just disconnected. And that's when you start observing yourself. But my message is, why wait for that? I mean, you can learn and change in pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in joy and inspiration. If you're waking up every morning being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, and you get up and you're inspired from an elevated self now instead of a limited self, you could observe the old self from an elevated state instead of that diminished state. And people are doing that. I've interviewed thousands of people in our work that have healed from really serious health conditions. And I would say about 90% of them, when I ask them, so what happened? The first thing they say all the time is, I just made up my mind. I just made up my mind I was going to do this. And they made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. And the choice that they made caused their body to respond to a new mind. In fact, the choice they made became a moment that they would never forget. It was an event, and the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they paid attention to the choice. And in a sense, they were remembering their future. And the body emotionally was getting a sampling, a taste of the future. And they're aligned to that future, and that's when the body's healing began. That's when the miracle started, right in that moment. That's how powerful we really are. Now, what if you did that every day? What if you made up your mind every single day you weren't going to get up from your meditation until you were that person you wanted to be? Game on now. Because you'd have to do battle with all the things that are not consistent with it. And that's exactly how our brain works. So then, if you want to be wealthy, you can't feel lack. You want to be a master, you can't judge your coworker. You want to be like somebody great in history, then you better execute peace in every area of your life. That's the law. People that are really sick, really sick, that are healing, they'll tell you that when they go to the doctor and the doctor said, where's the stage 4 cancer? They'll tell the doctor it's in the old person. I'm somebody else. Well, how'd you do it? Well, I downregulated the genes for disease by overcoming these emotions and these behaviors and thoughts, and I upregulated the genes for health. The doctor kind of looks at him and was like, wow, because it is possible to do that. And we've actually measured it in our events. We know that in 4 days, you can really change your gene expression. We're not doomed by our genes. We're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives. We are marvels of adaptability and change. So then what does it mean to change? Change means then to be greater than your body. Greater than the body that has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind. Greater than the body habituated into a predictable future. To be greater than the environment. To be greater than the conditions in your life. And if you're not being defined by a vision of the future, and you wake up every morning when you see the same people, and you go to the same places, and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time, now your personality is no longer creating your personal reality. Your personal reality is creating your personality, because every person, every object, everything, every place is mapped neurologically in your brain. And since you've experienced your boss, since you've experienced your coworker, since you've experienced your ex, the moment you've experienced them at some point, there's an emotion associated with them. So then all of a sudden, people wake up and they're not aware of this, but their environment is influencing the way they think and the way they feel. So when things are going good, they feel good. When things are bad, they feel bad, which means they're victims to their environment. Why are you unhappy? Well, this person made me unhappy, which means unconsciously that person is actually controlling the way I feel and the way I think. Now I'm a victim to that circumstance. So to change then is to be greater than that environment. So then you would have to reprogram the way you'd think and the way you'd feel to no longer return back to the same state of being. It's a formula, and you don't need 40 years of dedication to meditation to get it. You just got to understand the formula. And like playing ping pong or hitting a golf ball or dancing the salsa, you're going to figure it out sooner or later, and it's going to get easier and it's going to get fun. I assert that if you're not in the present moment, you're running a program. Paying attention is being present. And it's a skill just like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And you know when someone's present with you in your life because they're paying attention to you. And you know when they're not present with you because they're not paying attention to you. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you have all of your attention in the present moment, you're conserving a lot of energy to create with. If I'm talking to you and you're thinking about where you're going to go for lunch and who you're going to go with and how you're going to get there, and I'm talking to you, you left the present moment and your attention went to some future. And your energy will go down and you won't be able to comprehend what I said. If you start thinking about what you should have said at the staff meeting 3 days ago, and I'm talking to you and your mind is back in the past, you're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past. So then when a person's sitting in a meditation and they're doing absolutely nothing, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and their body for the last 10 years has been going in traffic and getting angry and frustrated in traffic, and now they're sitting in a meditation at 8 o'clock in the morning, the body's going to say, hey, you're off schedule. So the body's going to start looking for that emotion, and it's going to start influencing the mind, and you're going to start getting images and memories just so you could feel that emotion. Like now the person's back in the past. But if they become aware that they're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past, and they settle the body back down into the present moment, that's a victory. And those victories add up. And you're telling the body in that moment that it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and that's a victory.